Welcome to Inside the Chambers, where we give you an exclusive look at the dynamic world of business, law, and community development in the Bahamas. I'm your host, Bria Tai, and today we're joined by special guest, Mr. Carl Bethel, to get inside the mind of a two-time Attorney General and current KC. So welcome to the podcast, Mr. Bethel, and thank you for taking the time to have this discussion with me. I would just like to jump right in and ask if you can tell me a bit about your early life in the Bahamas.
My early life was pretty normal. I mean, I had my one brother, but we were part of a family of two sisters, and so we had 4 cousins, and we basically all grew up together. Even though there were separate houses, most of my time was spent with my aunt and grandmother, because Tita, as we call her, was like the centerpiece of all of our lives. The boys, being me, my brother Lyle, and cousin Trevor, we were the boys. We did the usual things, largely in Ridgeland Park, where my aunt lived. We'd go out there in the summer and spend weeks there. There would be sort of all the boys would sleep with their head on one side of the bed, and all the girls would sleep with their head on the other side of the bed, basically. We did all the usual boy things, rambling up in what is now Garden Hills, but it was all farmland and hills and wilderness up there, south of the Independence Drive Highway. Before any of that was created, we'd have rock fights with the neighboring boys. Everybody hide behind a wall, throwing rocks at each other. Yeah. We did all the usual things that children would do, mischievously. And I think we got through it, luckily, without anything more than bumps and scrapes and bruises. We went to school. My cousin Trevor, my brother Lyle, and myself, we went to St. Andrews. Well, before then, my mother worked at Bahamas Airways, which would have been in the late 60s. And she arranged, along with basically all of the Bahamas Airways Bahamians who were working there, for their children, and that would be me, my brother, and my cousin Trevor, to go to boarding school in England for 2 or 3 years.
Oh, wow.
So we got a fairly good grounding of primary school education. Came back well equipped, I guess. By 1970, we were all back. The airline had gone bankrupt by then, and then we went to St. Andrews and graduated, and then we went our separate ways. I got a scholarship to the United World Colleges in Canada.
Oh, wow.
A full scholarship for 2 years, and I got what they call the International Baccalaureate degree. And then I was off to London to study law at London School of Economics.
Wow.
So my brother went off to study theology, and he, of course, now is quite a prominent religious leader in the country, and we are very proud of that.
Wow, that's lovely.
So that's really a summary
of your early life.
My infant nurture, if you will.
So what exactly inspired you to pursue law? Was it an experience you had, or were there individuals that kind of pushed you to study law? What was that?
No. Well, life is full of life-shaping experiences. So all of the cousins, we all were packed off to go to Miami to visit our Aunt Bobby. And Bobby had a dog. And I went to pat the dog, and I knelt down to rub him up. And he bit me right along the side of the face here.
What?
Yeah. So all of my cousins were at the hotel and playing around in the pool. I had to go to the doctor. He wrapped me up and gave me medication and said, "Stay out of the pool." So for a week, I had to sit there and watch Perry Mason on TV. And Perry Mason, of course, was a lawyer who never lost a case and always got the culprit to confess in court.
Right.
So that inspired me as a young man to want to be like Perry Mason.
Could you explain some of the experiences you had as a young lawyer in the Bahamas when you were first beginning your practice?
I was initially in these prestigious law firms, Depute and Turnquest, but I think because of my political activism as a young lawyer, it was a little strange, so I left them and I went to work with Arlington Butler, former Speaker of the House, former Member of Parliament, former Minister, truly great Bahamian. And he had an exclusively criminal practice. I kept a mixed blend of criminal and civil practice.
Yes.
But one of the most engaging moments I remember is, I was walking downtown, and I happened to pass in front of the Supreme Court building. And I'm just dressed in my suit because I had something to do downtown. So the court clerk came to me, running up to me. He said, "The judge wants to see you." I go into the court. The judge says, "Miss Bethel, this man says you're his lawyer." I said, "I don't know this man. I've never seen him before." It was Justice Malone. "Miss Bethel, I hear what you say, but he says you're his lawyer. I'm going to adjourn this man until after lunch, come back at 2 o'clock, fully regaled and ready to start the trial." Well, the trial had already started. Anyway, I picked it up and read the brief over lunch, went in, and by the next morning, I'd gotten him acquitted.
Wow, that's
unanimously
amazing.
by the jury.
Yes,
So,
wow.
but it is one of those strange things, you just get collared in.
Yeah.
And so I continued and developed quite a healthy criminal law practice, as well as continuing to do civil law, which is my true love,
Yeah.
civil litigation.
So I'd like to discuss now some more defining moments of your career. So I know that you've written a book called Mighty Thunder, which provides a detailed and intriguing outline of the F&M political party. What inspired you to write this book?
That was very simple. I was asked to find something as basic as the day on which the party was actually declared or formed. We knew the year, we knew the place, but nobody knew the exact date. So the former Prime Minister, Hubert Alexander Ingram, asked me to find that out. At that time, I was national chairman of the party. This would have been in 2011. And I went down to archives, did the research, came back with the exact date. And then I said to myself, nobody knows our history. And also, the last sort of political history of the Bahamas was written by a very great author, a Bahamian named Colin Hughes, who went to live in Australia to pursue a career opportunities there afterwards. But that really ended in 1972. The substantive work ended in 1972. So there really has been no political history. Now, there have been other histories, broadly social histories. Michael Creighton and Dr. Gail Saunders put out a magisterial series, 2 volumes of Islanders in the Stream, but not a political history.
Right.
And there some, of course, elements of politics were expressed throughout their works, but I felt that there was a need for a political history, and particularly from the period of 1972. So I took it back from 1971, when the party was founded, and then extended the researches right up until the 19th of August 1992, when the FNM won its first term in government.
So how long did it take you to complete that research?
I did most of the research between 2011 and 2012.
Oh, okay.
Most of the basic research, I had the notes and everything else. The issue is not just having the facts and the dates, but to be able now to digest them and express these things
Right.
in a narrative history. That took a little longer.
Yeah.
Okay, but tinkering with it on and off and on and off, it really took about 10 years.
Wow.
Okay, but that really is because you can only do it during your off time, and I
Right.
spent a lot of time in public life and also in my practice that all required attention. So it just took time.
Yeah.
But for me, it was important because I'd read over the corpus of it and say, okay, I need to add this in, I need to look at this issue. And so it developed over time. It is what it is. Some would say, oh, it's revisionist. I said, no, it's not revisionist, because revisionism is the creation of a story without a foundation to try and change something.
Right.
Okay? I have the foundation because everything in the book is based on the contemporaneous statements, statements made at the time by the major actors.
Right.
Okay, press reports, etc. And therefore, when they say some issue that has been a long narrative in the Bahamas, that there was a merger between the Free National Movement and the UPP, that's not so. The record is clear that the FNM declared itself as a party, invited everybody else to join, including the Commonwealth, I think it's Commonwealth Party, and then there was also the National Democratic Party, NDP, headed by Paul Adderley. All of these persons attended the first meeting in 1970, January of 1970, at the home of Eugene Depuch, who at that time was a senior partner in the law firm that I used to work in, Depuch and Turnquist.
Right. Could you explain the transition from being an attorney to Attorney General?
It was, for me, always an enormous honor and privilege to have served as Attorney General. It is one of the high constitutional offices in our legal structure. It carries an enormous burden. The first time I was made Attorney General was under the governance of Hubert Ingram in his second term. At that time, the Attorney General was in the eye of the storm, the office of the Attorney General, because this was the beginning of all this international pressure to really step by step seek to erode, if not destroy, the offshore financial services sector, launched by the larger, more powerful countries of the world in an organization that is called the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development. But I think the development, if they intended to mean helping little black countries like ours develop, would have been a small d in the OECD. The intent was to clean up, if they will, as they said, the operations of offshore financial centers. And so that was the first iteration of it. They just called us up and said, we're going to blacklist you.
Wow.
And they did right away, which of course put enormous competitive pressures on us and legal pressures. And so it was the job of the Office of the Attorney General, in very close cooperation with the Office of Prime Minister. Mr. Hubert Ingram is a man who had the ability to solve almost any problem and made sure he was in the center of the solution. So we were there assisting and doing all of the legal aspects of that endeavor. And we got the Bahamas off the blacklist prior to the 2002 elections. So we were under the shadow of this blacklist for about a year. We were taken off the blacklist because of our efforts. That was the first iteration. The second iteration, of course, came when, under the leadership of Dr. the Most Honorable Hubert Minnis, when a second set of blacklisting, this time was more complex. It was both the FATF, the Financial Action Task Force, acting for the OECD, who did a blacklist, but also the European Union started to blacklist countries for different perceived deficiencies in their system. And while the FATF by this time gave you good notice of their intention, and so that you had the program as to what had to be addressed, the European Union basically, I was in Freeport, we were going to a conclave, we landed at Freeport, it was two separate planes. The Prime Minister jumped off his plane, ran on up to me and said, "You need to go back on this plane right now, and you fly into Brussels tonight."
Wow.
So I had to hop back on the plane, rush home, throw everything in a bag, rush off, catch a flight to Brussels. Next morning I was in the office of the European Commissioner, and basically she indicated that no, we're going to blacklist you. And so I said, well, I read your documentation, and it speaks about consultation before blacklisting. Well, Miss Bethel.
Wow.
So we had a similar challenge, and we surmounted that. I think in that short tenure, 2017 to 21, we were able to get off 4, possibly 5 blacklists.
Wow. Wow, Mr. Bethel, you've had a very extensive and exciting career, as you've made very clear. And you are also a KC, a King's Counsel. Could you explain or describe what it means to be a KC?
It is certainly a distinct honor to have been appointed as initially Queen's Counsel, but with the change in the monarch, King's Counsel now automatically. It is considered to be a position where you are a leader at the bar and are expected to give guidance and leadership, not just to the bar as a whole, but to any council that you are interacting with.
Right.
It's not something to sit around and brag about. It's just something that you try to use as much influence as you have to always seek to urge anyone you come in contact with in the profession to adhere to the highest standards and to keep, their own name in good standing, and hopefully to be a part of improving the overall delivery of justice in the Bahamas. Justice is not only on the criminal side, but justice in civil law as well. And it is the role of the attorney to be a minister of justice in everything that he or she does, to always be a minister of justice and to administer justice wherever possible.
Yeah. So given your extensive background in law, what advice would you give to any young, aspiring lawyers in the Bahamas?
Do not feel that because you now have the LLB behind your name, and you are Esquire, counsel and attorney, that is the end of your education. Every day in law is a day to learn something new. Always study. Any matter you have, find the case law. And it's easier said than done. You can read and should read academic texts about any subject that you're dealing with to get the background. And then you can go to a search engine like LexisNexis and pull down the latest cases, read them. Law is about staying abreast with the development. It is a rapidly changing field. All I can say is scholarship is important throughout the life of the practitioner.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Bethel, for this discussion. It was very informative.
Well, thank you very much.